All right, in today's podcast, Eric and I sit down with Dan Gookin. He is a current Coeur d'Alene City Council member, and he is running for the upcoming mayoral race in Coeur d'Alene. Let's see what Dan has to say. Let's go. Hey, welcome to the North Idaho Experience, a podcast for the people in North Idaho and those who are North Idaho curious. These are the stories of those who call North Idaho home. If you guys are thinking about making North Idaho your home, give our real estate team a call. We are back with another mayoral candidate for the city of Coeur d'Alene. We've got Dan Gookin with us today. Thank you for joining us, sir. So I think I should preface this conversation with that at the North Idaho Experience, we are not taking a stance. We're not publicly endorsing anyone. We are just providing information to the public so you guys can make informed decisions on your own. Dan, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Yeah. My first question, this is exactly how I started out last time with Woody, is what does the mayor do, in your opinion?
That's a great question because most people think the mayor is the city. And in my opinion, that's not what the mayor does. So in the stance of American government, the mayor is in administration and the council is the legislative branch. So what I will do as mayor is I will make sure that the will of council is being implemented by the staff. So to me, that's my number one job, is making sure that when council sets a policy, when council asks for a meeting, when council says, we want this done, that I'm the one who makes sure that that gets accomplished so that council can do its job.
Gotcha.
But the mayor is also full time. So whereas council only has authority when they meet, the mayor is there all the time. Now, I know that the job has a lot of PR, so there's a lot of people who want to meet with the mayor. But in my opinion, what I want to do is I want to just make sure that that policy gets carried out and that staff is doing things that must be done according to policy. And right now, I don't think that's happening.
Dan, how long have you been in city council?
Well, let's see, 1840. No, I've actually
rode his horse and buggy there back in the day.
Right. Wider.
Before Idaho was here. I think this is my 14th year on council, so I'm on my fourth term. Yeah.
And have you ever run for mayor before?
No, I've been asked to run for mayor many times. In fact, I had only been on council 2 years when people started saying, well, you need to run for mayor. It was actually in the paper that they said that Gookin might be running for mayor, which I had not wanted to do. And so I was happy being on council. But enough people have asked me over the years that I decided, well, let's give them a shot at it. If they want to have me as mayor, they can go ahead and vote for me. Then I'll be the mayor, and I'll see how that works.
Yeah, I was going to ask why this time when you've been asked before. What's the motivation? Is it with the way things are being run currently? Is that bugging you?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's been building. Mm-hmm. And my first choice was, of course, to find someone else to do it because I'm happy on council. So if I can find someone who will go in there and do the job and get things done the way I would like to see them done, but couldn't find anyone, asked around, no one really wanted to do the job, which is amazing because you would think, wow, they want to be the mayor, but that's not true. So I decided I'll do it. I was egged on by a lot of people. Oh, yeah, it's time to do it. They wish I would have done it 4 years ago, but here I am.
Is that normal for a city? It seems like, talking to Woody, he wasn't super into doing it either. So, I mean, is that normal? Do people, I feel like someone would always want that position, which always concerns me. If someone really, really wants to be a politician, you should be alarmed.
Authority or power. And
yes.
To that.
Yeah. But I mean, is that normal? Is that because the pay there's really not much pay? I mean,
well, are you doing it for the pay? I mean, that's the question. It's a really crummy pay.
Yeah.
So, if it's really a full-time job, then, I mean, the pay level for that is really, there's a lot of people at the city who make a lot more money than the mayor. But you don't do it for the pay. You do it because it's a job and it needs to be done. But I don't know why it would not be considered. I mean, I honestly don't know. You'd have to ask the people who turned it down to say, why wouldn't you want it? I would prefer not to do it, but I will do it and I will do a good job. But, if I don't know. You have to ask other people. What's going on? Why wouldn't you? We asked other people to do it when Mayor Hammond resigned. We went around and asked a lot of people if they'd be willing to fill in temporarily, and there was just zero response. I mean, it was like, my job is more important, or I'd rather do this, or I need to be with my family. So I don't know. I don't know why it would be. It seems like a few years ago there were a lot of people who had run for mayor, and now it's maybe one or two.
With how much polarity there is in politics right now, I'm actually surprised that more people aren't taking a stab at it.
Well, it's if you look at the political situation, one of the issues that, and we can talk about the KCRCC who wants to run someone in every elected position, they've had difficulty finding people to run in Coeur d'Alene and to win in Coeur d'Alene. So there's not a lot of enthusiasm there. Also, it's a no-win job too. In politics, generally speaking, you're never going to be an elected official that just everyone's going to love. So there's a degree there is like, do I want to put my family through that? Do I want to go through that? It's not a very popular thing these days.
Yeah. Oh yeah, one way or another, it's either in the paper or on social media. Your name's going to be out there, and
of course,
not always going to be positive.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into some of the questions that we had, and like I said, we ran through this same questions with Woody just to be fair. As the city continues to grow, what's your vision for how we expand while still preserving the character and charm that draw people here?
Well, that's one of my campaign priorities is to preserve the historic character of Coeur d'Alene, and I've done a lot of that. I'm currently on a committee that's looking at downtown to try to enact height restrictions and parking requirements because that is important. Parking is, I was just talking to my wife this morning, there's a little building on Northwest Boulevard next to the Dutch Brothers Coffee that's been empty forever because there's no parking. I mean, why is you as a business owner would want to put a business in there? So parking is a big issue for me. The historical character of the neighborhoods is very important. And if you look at my record on council, I've always stood up for neighborhoods. And I think we need to stop with the houses illas and the barn dominiums in the traditional neighborhoods. So I've talked to the realtors and developers, and Coeur d'Alene can't grow out. It's already reached its expanse. It has to grow up. Mm-hmm. And you have to increase density to do that. There are certain places in the city where that can be accommodated. We need the infrastructure to handle that, and we're working on that. But the way to make density work is to make it look good. You have to have the green space. Mm-hmm. And right now our code doesn't allow for a lot of green space. So you can build a huge, monstrous apartment building or condo building that goes and fits the box and looks like a box. Or you can do it with a lot of green space. And that's the way I would prefer to do it. You got to make it attractive. And if you look in other cities or in Europe, you can see a lot of this high density stuff, and it surprises you. You're like, there's really 100 homes in there or 100 units. It's like it doesn't look like it because there's trees around it and there's grass. And the way the city's code currently works, which I don't like, is that you can squeeze houses so close together that you can't plant a tree between them. And that's sad. So we need to fix all that. And I'm hoping to get in that direction. Again, it's something as a single council person, I can complain about it all day long. Until I get the votes, then nothing's going to happen. And even if I get the votes, I don't know if anything's going to change because I don't see any momentum on the behalf of staff to really go in that direction. And they don't have to until you get the leadership that's going to make them go in that direction.
Yeah.
I like that idea in thinking about how that would look. Because I think about, Mill River Complex and what that looks like down there now, and there's a big park and all that. Would the onus of that expense to keep things green and make things look nice, would that be on current taxpayers or the developers of that?
It's the developers. And the other thing we can do regarding development is we can make it easier for them. And right now there's a lot of hurdles. I heard there was one developer who wanted to put in a project, and they wanted, actually a couple of stories. One developer wanted to put in a project and wanted to do not low income housing, but affordable housing. Mm-hmm. And the city made it impossible for them to do so. A lot of red tape. They spent over $1 million just going through the process, engineers, studies, all this stuff, before they could even dig any dirt. And if the city can get out of the way, that would be great. If we can make it easier. I've heard about a business downtown that's waiting to open right now. There's a donut store waiting to open.
What? Hold up.
Oh,
you had me at donuts.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Perpetuating the stereotype.
But anyway, they're waiting on a permit. Why? Why is it? What can we do to make it a lot faster for these people to get things done? Or the developer who wants to put in some affordable housing and the city says, no, you can't do that. You have to do this high density stuff. You have to do these condos. You have to do these twin homes or whatever they're calling it. And it's like, why can't we be more accommodating? Where's the voice that's telling the city this is the way to do it? And you see it on council, but it doesn't translate into administration. That's the mayor's responsibility.
Got it. What is your take? Because I'd love to get some clarification on this. Obviously, my background, lobbied when we did collective bargaining and we talked contracts. So I'm roughly loosely familiar with the budget constraints of the city. What is your take on impact fees of those developments?
Well, I complained. I'm going to use a nice word because I don't know if this is a polite podcast.
Oh, you're good.
You can say whatever you want.
Yes.
For 10 years about impact fees. Why haven't we raised the impact fees? It's been, 5 years, 7 years, 12 years, 14 years that we haven't raised impact fees. And I complained and complained and complained. And finally, 2 years ago, they decided to raise the impact fees. Conveniently, right after the largest development in the city of Coeur d'Alene just came in.
And you know what rumors fly around, right? You have previous people in the administration that were in that industry, that know people in that industry, and that's just where that goes, right? There's obviously some sort of homie hookup or something like that at the expense of our current taxpayers.
It's fun to say that. We don't know if that's true or not, but all I know is that I think it ended up being 19 years since we increased our impact fees, which is the greatest period of growth in the history of the city.
Yeah.
And we could have had a lot of money there for new fire stations, for equipment, for parks. There could have been a ton of money sitting there. And it was just very disappointing and frustrating to me. But again, as a single council person, I can sit there at a meeting and I can say, we need to do our impact fees. But until you have a mayor that says, yeah, that's a good idea, let's get administration on it, nothing's going to happen, and nothing did happen.
Got it.
Dang.
No, that answered some questions.
That is frustrating. Well, what are your thoughts on, you mentioned the high rises that are coming. I mean, they're everywhere now. There's 3 cranes downtown right now.
Yeah.
Are there going to be more of those? How do you feel about those?
Well, if our downtown overlay committee, which I don't know the name of the committee, it's really funny because every time we have to ask. When that committee's study is done, that should be it for downtown. That should be the end of the tall buildings. And it's really fun for me because I'm on that committee. I actually threw myself on the committee. Another thing I want to do as mayor is have more involvement of council on these committees. I mean, when they announced that they were forming this committee, I said, will there be a council person on this committee? Knowing damn well there wasn't. And then they said, oh, sure, yeah, there'll be a council person on this committee. And I said, would you like to do it? Oh, yeah. Because I've been talking about downtown and the increased height of things and how it's destroying the character of downtown and parking. And so I'm on the committee. Now, it's very frustrating for me to be a council person on a committee because they will look at us and say, what does this guy think? Because I don't want to, if all of a sudden they're saying, hey, we need to make sure that, all the sidewalks are painted orange. And I say, well, I don't like the color orange. They're going to change their mind. So you want to hear what the people have to say without having a council person grouse about something. So I kind of sit there and observe. And what I'm observing is a lot of citizens from a variety of areas, these stakeholders, who want to see downtown preserved. They do not like the tall buildings. They want to see a height limit, 45 feet downtown for buildings, and buildings that look with the character of the existing downtown. So it retains its charm, it retains its attractiveness to the tourists, what makes Coeur d'Alene Coeur d'Alene. And that these 3 cranes that are there are the last 3 huge buildings that you'll see downtown, and nothing else will be that tall. Now, it might be tall somewhere else in the city. We might have taller buildings and that kind of development going on somewhere else. But like I said earlier, as long as it's attractive, as it has the green space, plenty of parking, it should work.
What other areas, anything on the radar?
We'd have to look at the big map. And I know the developers have found some areas, but again, the city stood in the way and said, no, you can't do that there. And that's not going to be accommodating to the growth of the city.
Who are the big, when you were talking about that, about putting someone on that committee, you said they. Who is they?
Well, what do you mean they? They who created the committee, or they on the committee?
Yeah, well, you used that term, and I was like, well, who is that? Because if it's not city council doing that, is that the developers that are creating these? Who creates the committees?
The committee was created because, I'd like to think it was created because I groused about it so long. So way back when, and I don't know how long ago, I made a motion on city council, which is all we can do. And I said I would move that we look at height restrictions for the downtown core. And I got no second. And then when there was a new council person elected, I'd made the same motion, and I got no second. Then the last time a new council person came on, which I think was Christy Wood, probably 6 years ago, I made the motion, and it got a second, and it passed. And that's why we're looking at it now.
Gotcha.
So you said you've talked a lot about the aesthetics of downtown and natural beauty of downtown Coeur d'Alene and retaining some of that. What else do you think makes Coeur d'Alene Coeur d'Alene? I moved here. I grew up in Spokane. I moved here from West Palm Beach, Florida. Seth grew up in New York. He came here from California. And there's a lot of transplants here. We all moved here for a reason. What do you think makes Coeur d'Alene Coeur d'Alene?
It's that small town feel. Everyone knows everyone else. I'm talking because since we've had a lot of people who come here who have kind of a different attitude a little bit, but it's slowly changing back to that old live and let live, being friendly. The story I like to tell is that my son, who was born here, he moved over to Seattle to go to school. And I talked to him on the phone, and he's like, "People here are mean." And I said, "No, Jonah, they're not mean. They're nice here. They're normal there." And that's kind of what it is. I mean, people see that charm, that, small town, everyone. I mean, went out for coffee this morning, saw 3 people that I knew, was passed on the street by 2 other people that I knew. It's kind of that thing, the friendliness, the beauty of the area, the lake, all the activities we can do outdoors, which I don't participate in, but a lot of people do. So I think, and we get a lot of like law enforcement that come here because they hunted here. So it's like, wow, went hunting in North Idaho, and now I want to live there when I'm retired. And this is great. I think that's very attractive to the area, and it's been keeping the city going for a long time.
Interesting. We get a lot of those. We get a lot of those retired law enforcement, retired military, and I'll tell you, a lot of them also move here because it's per capita one of the safest cities in the country.
Well, that's thanks to our police department, who's done a damn fine job since Chief White has been our chief, I think, for 11 years now. And then crime is down 80% in the city, and it keeps going down.
That's wild.
They have been so proactive in doing it. I heard from a county prosecutor 2 weeks ago who told me that the cartels have been informed that they will not stop in North Idaho. So they go to Spokane, and then they go to Montana, and they do not stop here. I know that the gangs that come here, that the smash and grab gangs, they've learned you do not do that in Coeur d'Alene. So, I mean, just tremendous respect for the Coeur d'Alene Police Department and the outstanding job they've done in fighting crime here.
Right, and I'd love to tout and say that they get all the credit for that, right? That was, and they do a great job, and they certainly push that. That is a core part of their mission set, but I think it's also really important. We have supportive city council members. We have supportive local government and supportive citizens, which I think that can't go understated because city council and the mayor have a huge voice within our community, and a lot of people will listen and follow that. It's a natural leadership role. So as long as that remains supportive of our law enforcement, which means even when times are tough, and I think about that a lot. We talked about it when we talked about having you guys on. Because I picture you guys up in front of a camera when things go poorly, right, or a nasty situation.
Yes.
The first person they put on the city is mayor.
Yeah.
That's a tough role. Have you given that some thought?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, I'm very proud of supporting our first responders and the police. And we pushed for one of the first things I did that I can remember doing was they needed more cars. And I remember pushing for that in the budget. Just recently, a couple of weeks ago, Chief White wanted a training facility, and there was a lot of mess up going with that, and I pushed for it. I actually made a motion to put it on the agenda when it had been pulled off the agenda, and that didn't make some people happy. But I would expect that kind of leadership already in the mayor's seat, and it wasn't there. So I had to step up and do it. Been a lot of things that I think we've done to the police department. We just expanded the locker rooms for the police department because they have more guys and gals who need that, and space for the sergeants. If you were a sergeant, you know that you used to have to share a desk, and so we even gave them windows. So
spoiled. Don't spoil them too much.
Been a lot to do, but in the mayor,
you guys did that for the sergeants after I left, for the record,
and that was
still allowed to share.
That was why. But the thing is, so on the other side of the coin, and you were there for that, we shot a dog. And so when you shoot a dog, the first thing they're going to look for is they're going to go to the mayor and say, why did you shoot a dog? And I remember that Mayor Widmeyer was there, and he was not very happy, but he had to deal with that. You have to be the face of the city. There's been a couple of other things that have happened in the city that have been quite unpleasant. And yes, the mayor has to stand up front, and he has to say what's going on. And you want someone who's going to do that and have confidence and know what's going on in the city so that you can respond to the questions that come up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to bring this up because it ended up coming up in conversation with the last one. For those that don't know, how does the selection process work? I mean, Chief White's not going to be there forever, and he's done a great job taking a system here and implementing it, and there's some good people in place, and I still say it's the top department in North Idaho. I love Cooney County too, but either way, I still say that. How does that selection process work through City Council? Because the police chief is actually hired by City Council, correct?
Yeah, we changed that. It used to be that it was a job. There was a former mayor who didn't fire a police chief, but accepted a resignation. And so now the process takes place. The City Council must approve the hiring of the police chief and the fire chief, which is good because it is a huge responsibility and a big position. One of the first things that happened to me when I was elected was I was approached by several police officers who said, we need help. Morale is down. The department is a mess, and we need someone to fix what's going on. So the former police chief had resigned or retired, and we had an interim chief, and it's like, we need someone to help lead the department. And I was part of that interview process. And yeah, Chief White just jumped off the screen when we interviewed him, when he did the video interview. It was like, whoa, look at this guy. He really has his stuff together. And he provided the leadership that we needed and the morale boost. And of course, almost immediately after he took office, that was when Greg Moore got shot. And he demonstrated tremendous leadership in that as well. I mean, because that was a mess. And I'm glad that he brought all those things. So he's set the bar high. When he retires, we have to look at everything. One of the things I like to do when we're replacing people in the city is to make sure we're getting the best candidate. And often the way to do that is you have to do a national search. And if our local candidate can compete on that level, then definitely we have the right person. But I'm a little questioning of all the internal promotions. I mean, just giving it to someone because they've been there. I want to make sure they're going to be a quality person. And that's really, and with the police chief, and especially with his record, we got to make sure that we have someone who's top flight.
We have a guy in mind. I won't say his name,
Okay.
but we'll tell you out there.
Yeah. Is he available?
Yeah.
Probably. Can we go back to the parking a little bit and touch on that? Because you said that is a priority for you, and that's a priority for a lot of people. Yeah. I know I've heard folks talking about potentially increasing the cost of parking for out-of-state visitors.
Can't do that.
No? Okay.
No.
Legally or?
Yeah, legally. Can't discriminate.
That sucks.
Yeah, as much as, and this is a joke, and I won't tell you who said it, but someone has said, boy, if we could put up a checkpoint at the border and keep certain people out of Idaho, that would be good. And we're talking about, some of the rabble-rousers who like to come to our downtown and party a little too hard, or on 4th of July cause a lot of problems for us. But you can't discriminate, based on the license plate. I guess that, the state can do that at the state parks, but we can't really do that here. So there's no way, I mean, as much as it's justified to say that the citizens here have paid for the parks and paid for the parking lots, there's just no way to discern who that person is. We do have a program available. So if you want to, you can, for I think it's $10 a year, you can buy a pass so that you can park in any city parking lot without having to pay the fee. And a lot of people don't know about that, but that is available.
Is that just for city of Coeur d'Alene residents?
Yes.
Or not county?
Not county.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And that's been a point of contention for me, too, because the parking lots used to be free. And I was very upset when they wanted to make them paid. I think I voted no on that. And then they wanted to make the free lot south of City Hall paid, and I really threw a stink about that.
Good.
And now they're talking about raising the parking fees again. And, I got to look at the schedule. I got to see what are we doing with the money? Are we banking it? Or are we actually using it for maintenance? Because I walked through a parking garage the other day and it was a mess. And I'm like, well, when are we going to clean the parking garage? Well, need more money in the bucket to clean this parking lots, which is where the parking fees go to.
And if I'm not mistaken, it is an out-of-state contractor that handles all of the parking. Fees, right?
Yeah, Diamond patrols the parking lots for the city, which saves us money because there's no city employee who's doing that. So
I was wondering if it did save money or if it
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it does.
Well, that's good. So, okay, can you charge Can you charge everybody more and then make it free for Idaho residents or cheaper for Idaho? Is that still discrimination?
I think that's discriminatory. I don't think we can, as much
Why
as
don't
we
we just
want
go down to the
that,
Capitol and tell them to pound sand?
I would love to do that too. I
this
keep
is
saying,
North
don't let me
Idaho.
come down there. Don't make me come down there. So yeah.
Well, all right, you open that box. I'm going to ask some questions about that. It's challenging. I had said that if I'd stayed in law enforcement, I was going to spend more time down south, even though I hated it. Because I was going to lobby for a few things, like potentially a 20-year retirement for law enforcement, because I have a very strong opinion on the effectiveness and the long-term ramifications of a 30-year career in law enforcement. But I digress. As a mayor of one of the budding cities in the state and the largest in North Idaho, I would venture to guess that's going to pull you down south more.
Yeah. Maybe. Probably. I haven't even looked into what the requirements are of that, but there's a lot of stuff we could lobby for. I mean, they messed with our budgeting process. When urban renewal closed, the city should have gotten about $3 million in revenue every year, which was the property tax that was being taken by urban renewal for 25 years or so. And boy, we could have used that money. Could have provided some property tax relief. We could have done some things because it's ongoing money.
And
So
you had contracts with police and fire.
and we had the contracts that needed to be filled. But then the legislature hosed us and took that money away. So we weren't able to do that. It was a real shock. And then they decided they would fix the budgeting problem for the city by allowing us to only take 90% of new growth, which means new growth doesn't pay for itself. So the new subdivision comes in and it could potentially generate, just round number, $100,000 in property taxes. We only get 90, which means the rest of the city is paying for that growth. And I don't know what they were smoking down south, probably nothing because it's illegal here. But they were drinking something that told them that was a good idea, and it wasn't.
So when you say the urban renewal districts, when those closed at $3 million, how much of that actually came back to Coeur d'Alene City?
It was only $1 million.
And they took $2 million, and that went to the state?
No, $2 million went back to the property taxpayers, which is fine. I mean,
Right.
It was property tax relief because it does impact property taxes, no matter what other people tell you. But that should have been our decision. And at the time, I spoke with Mayor Widmeyer, and what he wanted to do was make a lot of it go to property tax relief and the other half to go to fund people, which would have been logical. But we were not allowed to make that decision. So 100% of it went to fund people.
Why is that? Is that normal in other states as well, where that's not left up to the cities? It's left up to the state?
It depends on the state. So the legislature, the political types down there, crow about being supportive of smaller government and local control. They vote the other way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I'm not here saying we need more property tax. I'm a big, less government intrusion guy, but I also recognize the added stress on our infrastructure and public safety with an increase in houses and people that are here. And man, everything you're talking about, as much as you don't want to go down south, I truly think that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and it's really easy to forget about Coeur d'Alene if you're down there in an Idaho state legislature.
Yeah.
But the big problem with property taxes is not what the city charges or if we raise property taxes, it's your assessment. And that's something that it's like they're just completely missing the target when they say, we want to fix property taxes. Then you fix assessments. So the reason your property tax goes up 10% or 20% or 1 year for me, 40% was because the assessment changes. So you want to fix property taxes in Idaho, you fix assessments. And it surprises me how clueless they are on this issue.
I remember that 2022 is when they went up. Is that it?
Yeah,
Drastically.
they hiked, and
Yes.
it was insane. That's why it went up. If you actually, and I've done the math because I'm a nerd, and you look at what you're paying to the city of Coeur d'Alene as a percentage instead of just the total amount, the percentage doesn't really go up or down much. It's, if we raise the property taxes 3%, your percentage that you may pay may be 3.5%, it may be 2.5%. It depends on your assessment. But the reason you're paying more in property taxes, the reason your property tax bill jumps from $2,000 to $3,000 is your assessment.
Right.
Is there a better way to do that, in your opinion?
Yeah, you just cap them. So you say the assessment is capped at the CPI, or they can't raise the assessment more than 5%. The other problem is commercial property assessment. So commercial property doesn't get reassessed in Idaho because you need like to like according to the current rules. So the Coeur d'Alene Resort was built in 1986. it's still assessed at its value in 1986.
No way.
It's a $5 million hotel.
No way.
Absolutely. And that is a huge problem because all that money that would normally be collected on the commercial properties is now being subsidized by people in residential zones.
That pisses me off.
I'm glad you brought up the Coeur d'Alene Resort.
Yes.
Oh, good. I was
Are
gonna,
we,
I was gonna
are
tell
we
you
headed there later?
No, yeah, maybe. No, it's interesting because we do a lot. Look, we are just blunt instrument door kicking street cops, right? But we talk a lot about that because we hear about the budget because it impacts us directly. And we have the unfortunate position often to be hiring either brand new cops or lateral cops where we ultimately tell them, hey, look, you're good enough to work in Coeur d'Alene City and protect the city. You just can't afford to live here, right? And it's tough. And that's a mixed bag. And that's nobody's fault. That's just Coeur d'Alene's a desirable place to live where there's demand and less supply. Prices go up. So my point is we discussed the Idaho statute regarding resort cities. What is your opinion of that? Because when you read the characterization of a resort city, do you think Coeur d'Alene City fits that?
Yeah, let me see that. So I actually sent this down to one of our representatives. I think it was Ben Taves, and what I did was I said what I would like you to do to fix this, and you have it here. It's highlighted in highlighter. I said what you need to do is you need to cut those 4 words, and basically the Boats Vineyard Resort City. And then cut that out.
Yeah.
may have a bed tax. This is about a bed tax. And I said, all you need to do is cut that cap out. And why that cap was set at 10,000 instead of a percentage is one of the flaws in legislation. Is they set specific dollars amount. So in the United States Constitution, it's you can go to court if the value is more than $20, which of course $20 then is probably 10,000 now.
Right.
So that when they set that amount. So I wanted to see something done. Nothing got done in that effort. I know there's another effort going on. There was a lady who was going to run for council, but she ran out, Victoria Slater. She's been working on this issue. There was legislation introduced last session to basically kind of repeal and redo this and allow us to have a bed tax. Because you see, the problem is the city of Coeur d'Alene has 2 populations. We have a year-round population, which is like 56,000. And we have a summer population, which could be 80, 90. We don't know because no one's ever done that measure. And what my proposal originally was, it's like if we could have a bed tax on all the visitors who come here, who currently don't pay anything other than sales tax, if we could have a bed tax and have all that go to first responders, that would help our city so much because, as you know, there's more stuff that goes on in the summers. Former law enforcement, there's more that takes place downtown where all the action happens, and that's when we get the overtime. That's when we get the whatever. I don't know. I mean, all the stuff for first responders. There's overtime, comp time, constant manning. There's all this stuff that goes on all the time that costs us a lot of money. So like in the fire department, I know they budgeted, I think, $300,000 last year for constant manning, and it went up to $700,000. We're paying for that. But a lot of that is due to the influx of people, the visitors we have, who aren't paying anything into the system. I mean, I said, can we do a bed tax? How about an alcohol tax? I mean, if we did we had like an alcohol district where all the drinks, there was an extra nickel that was charged for every pour, and all that money went into first responders. I mean, that would help our budget tremendously because the 2 largest departments we have are police and fire, and that's almost half the city. And imagine if we could get extra funding for that, then we wouldn't be putting the burden on the taxpayer, who's not really responsible for all the extra we need.
That is a great idea because we have a wonderful department right now, but to keep that, we need to attract the best.
Yeah.
And you can't do that if you're not paying competitive wages.
And the pay, I got to tell you, the pay for the city needs to be fixed. And I don't know how we're going to do this given the limitations we have, and I don't want to throw a huge burden onto the taxpayer. But we underpay our attorneys, so we're not able to find attorneys. And law enforcement, we have a problem with that because there's what's called compression, which is where you've been there long enough and you keep getting a raise, which is good because we want to keep you. But all of a sudden you have the sergeants are bumping up into the lieutenants and the lieutenants are bumping up into the captains.
Right.
Why would anyone want to be, right now this is an issue, why does anyone want to be a lieutenant in the Coeur d'Alene Police Department when as a sergeant you're getting paid almost as much?
Well, and it's right now it's if you are a detective and you're a senior detective, you will take a pay cut to promote to sergeant,
and
even
see,
though your
See,
liability.
that is just
and that's
weird.
nuts. We need to fix that.
Yeah, that needs
we
to be
need
fixed.
we need to fix that. And there's a lot of stuff. There's in the street department, there are certain they call them leads. Okay, they're really managers, but they won't pay them what a manager's pay is because they can't afford it.
I got that. I had that in county. They called it a lead deputy, which meant I could run a shift, but I didn't get paid anymore.
Wow.
There you go.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, but county's gotten way. I mean, they've done a really, really good job, and I think Coeur d'Alene's always set the bar.
But we need to address these issues, and they're not being addressed right now, which means they're snowballing, and it's going to get worse.
Is this resort tax solvable? I mean, is that just?
Yes.
It seems like it should. Somebody can just say, "Hey, yeah, take that number out. There's a cap of 10,000." If you're not tracking what's going on, that there's a cap of 10,000 population to designate a city as a resort city, and if you're under that 10,000 and you are a resort city, you can charge a bed tax. And
If we just a bed tax, an alcohol serving tax, some kind of thing, what we have to do is we have to wave a magic wand, and suddenly the legislators' average IQ raises by 20 points. They'd figure it out, and we could get it done.
Well, to provide some perspective, reading the bottom of this statute was added in 1978 and it was amended in 1981. So when they put a number on this of 10,000, obviously the populations were considerably different in the entire state back then. And I think that's the frustrating part for me. Why not let the cities make their own decisions? If they're going to have less tourism and less cash flow because they put on a bed tax or an alcohol tax, let them suffer those consequences themselves and make the decision themselves.
But it has to go to a vote. I mean, regardless, it has to go to a vote. So even if we have this power, it has to go to a vote of the people.
Good.
And then we tell the people, we say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this bed tax. This is only being paid for by tourists and people who use the hotels. And do you approve this? And the money will go to first responders. So it's not going to be going so that the mayor can build a statue of himself in City Park. Mm-hmm. It's going to go to first responders. And I think the public would support that.
oh,
I do
they
too.
better, yeah, yeah.
Like it's when you're looking at the alternatives are property taxes, which I don't know how else you avoid that.
Yeah.
Because that's the big challenge. For people that have lived here for a really long time, they don't want to be additionally burdened with property taxes to support a higher demand on the infrastructure or first responders that they didn't create. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. As the population grows, their demand hasn't changed, in their opinion, right? So how do we get to targeting the expansion? I think taking those impact fees would have been a really big part.
Doesn't really help with people, though. Impact fees helps for infrastructure. Streets, parks, fire, police. But it can't really, you can build a police substation with it, but you can't man it.
Right. Those fire trucks are expensive, though.
Yes, they are.
Can't do fire trucks with impact fees either. So
Really?
it just has to be new equipment.
Oh, okay.
A couple other questions. I asked, this is just a very basic question, but I know someone out there is wondering, and I asked Woody the same question. What is your party affiliation?
I'm a Republican. I'm actually on the Republican Central Committee.
Okay, cool.
But it is a nonpartisan position. I mean, my record in office is conservative. I don't vote for property tax increases. I always want to make sure that we're keeping government small and that we're streamlining things as much as possible, which is about as Republican as you can inject into nonpartisan city elections. But we don't deal with a lot of the hot button issues.
For example, I also brought this up with Woody. The Boise City designated a pride flag as a city flag. Is that something that is on the radar in Coeur d'Alene?
No.
Okay.
There's two flags we should fly, which would be the United States flag and the Idaho flag, and that's all
Thank
I
you.
would favor flying. I don't think, that someone mentioned somewhere as a joke that we can't. Oh, is it the last council meeting that we can't even fly the Girl Scout flag? And I'm good with that.
Yeah.
People do things like that in the name of inclusion, but it actually excludes other people. And I think the only way to include everyone is to have the only flags allowed, American flag and potentially the state flag.
We should stay out of all that stuff and basically let people be free to live whatever life they want to live, and they want to celebrate something. They're free to celebrate it, and we should support everyone who wants to do whatever they want to do as long as it's legal.
I said it on that one.
Well said.
If it's your front yard, fly whatever flag you want, right? If you want to put a bumper sticker on your car, okay. I mean, that's freedom of speech to me.
Just make sure the building department has inspected your flagpole.
That's fair. You're going to meet Sean if you don't.
Another question. This one's a tough one, but somebody's going to ask this to you. I saw it was on social media. There was a video of you. I don't know if it was on a podcast, and you know where I'm going with this. Of
course.
Yep.
You asked Woody this question too, right?
And you were a rant. I don't know if it was taken out of context.
It's absolutely taken out of
I
context.
figured it was, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of explain it because you know it's going to come out.
Sure, it'll come up, and it came up last time, and I still won the election. And actually, that video was made in 22, so it's been around a while, and it's still someone who sees it for the first time. My belief is that was paid for by political operatives specifically to discredit me. Okay. And it was done because I was being effective. So they took things I said out of context, which is really easy to do. You can do that to anyone, honestly, and make them look like they're saying, which it surprised me because when I first thought, I said, if anyone believes this, they're an idiot because they can see, my clothes change, my hair changes, and things are obviously cut mid-sentence. So after about 2 years, I put up another video that's on my on the Kootenai Rants page where you can see exactly what was said originally in context. So most of the stuff that I said was criticizing what I would say are people who claim to be religious but behave the exact opposite way. And so when you are going to be talking about that, just as it says in the Bible many times, when Christ or Paul will criticize someone who is doing something incorrectly and saying this is it, and saying no, that's not the way it works. We have a right to do that, and we should be holding other people accountable for what they say and what they do in public. And if I'm criticizing someone because they say they're Christian, but yet what they're doing is completely not Christian, and then you just splice out some of the words that I said, then it sounds like, oh my God, he hates all Christians, which is wrong. I went to church all my young life. I've been to various churches in this area. I don't have a church home, but I do. My wife is a Lutheran, and I go to that church. But it was ridiculous. But yet, in the politically charged environment, it had legs. And I think if people actually understood who did that video and why, they would be more offended at why it was done. It was done to discredit me, and it hasn't worked, but it still gets traction because there's people who haven't seen it. But I have answered and responded to all that stuff, and I think it's ridiculous. But I still have to do it because
I'm sure it'll come.
effective.
I'm sure I did see it recently, and I'm sure it'll come back up again.
And it's obnoxious, and you look at it. But I think anyone with intelligence is going to look at that and say, "Well, this is taken out of context." And you can do that to anyone. They do it to the national politicians too.
Sure.
I fully expect there's going to probably be some deep fakes and other stuff that happen in the election because these people on the far right, and I'm not talking religious people on the far right, I'm talking some of these people who do flirt with anti-Semitism and white supremacy. They are desperate to take over the city of Coeur d'Alene, and so we'll see how desperate they get coming up in the fall.
Yeah.
Another good question. Well, we've done you a disservice if we didn't give you the platform to address that.
Yeah.
A lot of people will see it.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. You were there in 2020, of course, and I'm bringing up one situation. I'm just curious what your take on it was.
Anything happen in 2020?
That was, a few things. But there was the BLM protests that occurred in Coeur d'Alene.
Oh, yeah.
They're simultaneous when they were in Spokane. Obviously, our city, we didn't get impacted like other major cities did. But we had a pretty big, I just think about big things in the news that were Coeur d'Alene City. At that time, there was some intention to go downtown and cause some damage. A whole bunch of armed citizens showed up downtown, which certainly drew attention from anybody in an elected position within the city. What was your opinion of that?
Well,
situation?
they have, it's Second Amendment state. I'm a very strong supporter of gun rights. So that's what they can do. We got a lot of complaints from people who said, oh, there's armed men walking around downtown, and armed men and women. And I don't like it. And the response to the city from Mayor Woodmeyer was, well, this is, there's nothing illegal about that. You can walk around with your guns if you want to. It makes people uncomfortable. So if that's what you want to do, is make people uncomfortable, then understand that's what you're doing. I would prefer that they not do that, but they have every right to do that. And so the city did not interfere at all. We were panicked that something would go wrong. I mean, the number of idiots in a crowd is proportional to the size of the crowd. And so if someone accidentally discharged a weapon, that could have been chaos. And that was one of the concerns of the PD. So, but everything, it was there. On one side, you could say that was, an abuse and intimidation. On the other side, you could say, well, it stopped the rioters. We don't really know either way if there was going to be rioters or not. So the good news is, of course, is that it happened once. Nothing happened downtown. And they tried to make it an annual thing, and then that kind of petered out.
Let it go that direction.
What those complainers don't realize is that there's always people armed downtown. They're just under a T-shirt.
Yes, it's not so overt.
It is. But, and then, there's a few people who do open carry. And I remember when we first moved here, way back in the early 1990s, we went into the mall, and there was a guy who had 9/11 on his hip. And he was asked to leave the mall, which, of course, is private property, and you can do that. I mean, he was asked to leave. He wasn't trespassed. And it just was because it was making people feel uncomfortable. So, but even then, more and more often, you do see people who open carry here. And it's allowed, and I'm kind of like, whatever.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who just move here, who are fresh from here, and maybe from a state where that's not allowed, think, oh, my God, something's wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings on it too. I mean, tactically, I think it's a terrible idea. I think you're much better off keeping it concealed.
Right.
But it's your right.
And in Idaho, I can tell you as a cop here, we anticipate that just about everybody we come in contact with is likely armed.
That's safe. Yes.
Yeah. And,
safe.
and I don't have any problem with that. I think there is something to that people don't want to commit crimes here. Most of our citizens are armed, and a lot of the ones that did show up downtown, I was in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And were responsible and said, hey, it's your First Amendment rights to protest, but you're not going to burn or damage our city.
Yeah.
And there was some stock in that. I had some pride in a lot of that. There were some that were really, you could tell by the way they were carrying. You're like, oh my gosh, you just pulled that out of the box, right?
The Uncle Mike's nylon holster flapping around. You're like, no, buddy, no.
But some were just, no, you guys go ahead. And watching the interaction between the two sides was really fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, watching them go back, and it was reasonable.
Yeah.
Hey, go ahead, guys. Go ahead.
I love everything about that.
Right.
Because it was reasonable, and because nothing happened in the city, because we talked about in the last podcast, I was a riot cop for 10 years in California. And I was all those same riots. I was working down there in Sacramento Bay Area, and I watched those cities burn and get looted, and small businesses get run out. And it's
families
a huge
get destroyed.
Impact. It's a huge impact. It's not just corporations that are getting, Target that's getting looted. It's mom and pop shop, and they're done.
Except for the Korean ones where they were standing on the roof.
Right, remember that?
Yeah.
So to see that up here and to see the community come together to protect itself, and it was effective. I mean, that's amazing, and it gives me hope. And if we have a bigger disaster, what does that look like? People coming together. That's the kind of community I want to live in.
And we don't have break-ins because everyone's armed. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, what's crazy is it was yesterday. My wife took the girls to gymnastics, which is there at Avant, like 95 in Hanley, right next to our brokerage.
Yeah.
And she said a lady ran her daughter in and came back out, and in that amount of time, somebody broken into her car, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm seeing this," because it's so uncommon here.
No way.
I was like, that guy will get caught in about 20 minutes because it's probably some sort of, whether it's the meth or the psychosis, chicken and egg conversation. I don't know which one came first, but it's one of those because it's broad daylight. And we just don't get that here.
Yeah.
I was like, how many cop cars are there? She's like, 3. I was like, oh, yeah, just stand by. Like, it'll, like that. It just doesn't happen here very often. And you're right. Those pass-through, those felony lane gangs, they don't want to operate here anymore. There was one out of Florida that we caught, and they'd hit like 8 states, and they got caught and levied charges here. And
they're going to prison.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You don't mess around in Idaho, you're going to prison. So. Yeah, that's wild. I mean, also people should follow basic common sense and lock your car.
Right. I agree. Make it more difficult.
Yeah. Right. Take that away.
Make yourself a harder target.
But just a little bit.
But because the crime's so low, they don't. And so we used to take my wife's son to a private school. And the gang went through there and cleaned up all the cars because no one locked their cars. They left their purses in the cars.
They're going to take the easy target,
Yeah,
and then just don't give them the opportunity.
Right, and that's one of the things. So we'll get a police report and it'll say there's a bunch of car burglars going around some neighborhood, and we see the map and we see all where it is. Why? Because they didn't lock their cars, and it's amazing because it's like a gun was stolen from the car. Why are you leaving your gun in an unlocked car?
Right, that's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Or lock your house door. I always lock my house door, right? If someone gets into my house, they damn well know they shouldn't be in there because the door was locked.
Right, lock your door, close your garage,
and
There's
then
a
they
lot
can
of
get
common
dealt with,
sense.
right? And I don't feel bad.
And if you happen to be there, they brought that on themselves. Yes.
You kick my door in, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, man, we hit some of the bigger topics I wanted to get into. You got anything pressing?
Yeah. What do you think is your day one? You're elected. What do you think is your biggest roadblock or impediment to address moving forward? To either keep us going the way we are, or the thing that really has motivated you day one. What do you think is the biggest thing you want to address?
You mean the issue that we're going to handle?
Yeah.
Probably right away, nothing, because you don't be the new captain and rock the boat. So it's going to take a lot of study to figure out what the system is and how it works on the inside. So nothing right away. There's a couple of things I want to change procedurally. I think we need more communications between the staff and the city council. So one of the first things that I would like to see is that information flow, the floodgates open. Right now, the staff tells the mayor a lot of stuff. And I get that from Woody too, because he's like, wow, this is overwhelming. That information is not passed on to council. So just making sure that council is in the loop and getting a bunch more information. So that would probably be the first and easiest thing to do, because the information's already flowing. It just needs that one channel that's been closed needs to open again. And the argument that I got when I brought that up a long time ago, they're like, well, council doesn't really like reading it. It's like, it's reading. It's like you can give it to them and it's their choice whether to read it. But if you don't give it to them, you're denying them the choice. So let's open up the floodgates of communication and start letting people know exactly what's going on in the city. Right now, what I do is I go around. I know Woody does this too. I go around and I visit with people, go to water, wastewater, go to parks, go to police, go to fire, and you just sit there and say, well, what's going on? And then you get all the information. And it's like, it's sad that I actually have to go out and physically visit someone to get information that could easily be sent to me in an email. So that's like the first change that's going to happen. We're going to open up the floodgates.
Is city council pretty functional right now, in your opinion? I mean,
we're functional but ill-informed. We're underinformed. So
because of what you just said.
Yeah, because a lot of times something comes to us with a yes or no decision, which means the decision has been made elsewhere. So why should we be given an up-down choice when we were not involved in the process at all? So are council people serving on a committee? Nope. I mean, I had to ask to be put on that downtown committee. We're looking at a water rate study right now, and it was just presented to us. Was a council member involved in the water rate study? No. Fire department is doing their own study, and I said, was a council person involved with this study? And that's just how it goes. It used to be back in the old days under Mayor Bloom, Mayor Widmeyer, the council would always be involved. One of the first things that I attended was a rate study for the water department, where I was part of the group that chose who was going to do the rate study. And council's not involved at that level at all, and it needs to be involved. We need to be informed and know what's going on and not be thrown something at the last minute and be like, well, what's this? And right now I'm very proud because we have a lot of good council members who point that out. And we table items or we throw things back and say, no. We have not been informed of this. When were we going to be informed that this was going on? And it's really sad to be sitting here as a councilman and to say that to the public. It's like, well, you're not doing your job. It's like, I'm being prevented from doing my job because I'm not given any information. And they have been made aware of this. This is not just me grousing about it. We have, for the past several years, said this is the problem. When we do an evaluation or we're asked to do an evaluation, what's the number one issue? It's communications. You need to improve the communications. It's your job to keep us informed, and you're not doing it.
That's a big deal. But from our world, that's number one thing.
Yeah.
That's lives.
I feel like I've learned a lot about local politics.
I have too, actually.
It's not politics, it's government.
Yeah, that's true. There we go.
Good point.
That's
So, Dan, if you were to take my crystal ball that my wife so lovingly bought me here,
Sweet.
and you were to, I know, that's so cool. And you were to, I mean, what does Coeur d'Alene look like to you in 10 years?
In 10 years. Well, it's probably going to be a lot bigger. Traffic's going to be worse. We tried to fix the traffic problem, and this was unfortunately in 2020, with a vote that we were going to raise the registration fees on vehicles, $50 each. That would have gotten us through matching grants $800 million to do road improvements, and the public voted it down. It was not sold well. That was the problem. And so people just said, well, I don't want to pay more for my fees. Raise our gas taxes instead. Well, you don't want to pay more for gas taxes either. You'd rather sit and wait in traffic. And that's what's going to happen. They're going to sit and wait in traffic. Unless we address that issue again, traffic's going to be terrible. That's a countywide issue. That's not really a city issue. Getting from point A to point B is going to be much more miserable. And it has been. I mean, anyone who's been out.
It's noticeable in the last
Yeah.
couple of years.
And-
Is there a big project in mind that could help alleviate it? Do you have some insight on that?
Well, just doing the getting the money here to go ahead and improve our existing infrastructure would be a start. The plans are already there. I mean, they've laid out the plans. I'm part of the KMPO, which is the Kootenai Master Planning Organization, which is required by the feds to do traffic studies to get people from A to B. And so their plans and studies have all been done. We know where the problem is. There's always going to be the problem of funding. How do you fund it? We've been waiting at the city for years to expand Atlas Road. Atlas is still a 2-lane road that was built by the county, and I don't know when. So we need to improve all this stuff. It's always going to come down to a question of funding. But that's going to be the biggest thing in 10 years that people will really notice the traffic. Hopefully, downtown will be wonderful and all the neighborhoods will be protected from all the big barn dominiums and the house zillas and stuff. And we've hopefully dealt with the problem of where to put people by getting the city out of the way and having some of the attractive high density put in around the city.
Yeah, great. Is the Hutter bypass going to happen ever?
Probably not.
No.
Yeah, it's just it's a question to me of why. I mean, I would love to have another north-south route in the city. That's a problem. Actually, an east-west route would be good. Getting around the city is tough.
Yeah, 95 sucks.
Yeah, and so
Middle of
sucks.
the day, you just avoid it.
Yep.
it's just we need. And Hutter was considered, I think, because it's really just underdeveloped out there. I mean, it's rural. And the problem with that is that may handle some of the traffic that's going eastbound from Washington that wants to go north. So then they can avoid the heart of the city. But as far as like calling it 95 and saying, 95 goes up to 90 and then it jogs over 3 miles and then it goes north, no one's going to do that. So it doesn't really make much sense. I think it would make sense as a highway, but not as a freeway. So having that alternative route there. But that's a big problem is going east-west in the city needs to be figured out because we just don't have east-west. You ever play Grand Theft Auto?
I have not. A long time ago, yes.
Admit to it. Well, one of the tricks in Grand Theft Auto is that the streets are laid out in a way that you can't really easily get around. So you're always, weaving in and out, which makes the game more challenging. Well, the same people who designed Grand Theft Auto did the streets in Coeur d'Alene. So
Fair.
Yeah, I mean, 95, you'd need overpasses or underpasses or something.
Gosh, I will preface it with this. Okay, traffic, especially in the summer, can get a little bit rough. But in Idaho, we complain if we sit through 2 streetlights. All right? I moved here from West Palm Beach, Florida. You could go drive into Miami anytime between the hours of 7 a.m. and 6 p.m., and it's brutal.
So we may experience some of that, but hopefully we still have the charm of downtown and the neighbors and the neighborhoods that are attractive. I mean, that would be a goal, is to maintain that. The other thing that I would love to see, it's just we need to find out how to bring the jobs here so people can have employment, be able to afford the housing. Right now, the city, through its urban renewal agency, is developing the Atlas Park, Atlas Mill, which a friend of mine calls the Atlas Millionaire site. And, homes there starting in the low 900,000s.
Oh, yeah, super affordable.
Yeah, and so who's making $250,000 a year here who can afford that?
Yeah, it's tough.
And that's, so it's like, why is the city underwriting that when we don't have the jobs. Where are the jobs? And who's working to bring in the jobs and bring in? We could use some manufacturing here. I know that former Mayor Hammond was working on that when he was a legislator to try to get something done. We have the Coeur d'Alene Economic Development Corporation. We have actually there's a few of them who are trying to work to get jobs here. We really need to amp that up and put some caffeine into it so we can get more and more jobs here for people who live here who want a nice career.
Can make it more affordable.
Yeah.
There's certainly some awesome entrepreneurs out here with really cool businesses in our local area. We have them on a lot. And that always blows my mind what's actually here and is known nationally. But I agree with you. Something that'll bring some decent paying jobs here.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I hit everything I wanted to hit.
Neat.
That was very informative. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
You delivered it well, educated me a bit, so I appreciate that.
Good.
Thank you for coming
Thank
out.
you for having me on the broadcast.
Yeah.
Podcast.
Podcast.
What this internet thing is all about.
I
hear it's going to be big someday.
Well, good on you. I mean, anybody that's going for a position, some people, don't want to do podcasts because they are kind of informal and there's no teleprompter. You just have to.
Yeah, we didn't give you questions ahead of time.
Yes.
It was you came into this dark. So
Thank you.
Good on you.
appreciate
Caffeine
that.
helps.
Yeah, same. Well, Dan Gookin, thank you. Appreciate coming on. And, if we have an update before the election, maybe we'll have you back by then and we'll go from there.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, best of luck to you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.